Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, I am Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder at the law firm Baker Donaldson. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback, helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by... Really? Where's John? Yeah, you got to go to music school. Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our new best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. So this is going to be a fun episode. We appear to be very giddy today.
Yeah.
The rule for all people involved is to try and keep the laughter to a minimum so we can actually get through the wonderful topic we have for today.
I understand. So let's introduce our guest today, who's entered into the fun chamber. So today we have Jason Sarfati, who is the Chief Privacy Officer and VP of Legal at Gravy Analytics, a leading location intelligence company that delivers real-world consumer intelligence to help organizations overcome today's biggest challenges. Jason, hello. How are you today?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are excited that you are here. And in our pre-show, we were talking a little bit about how many people are either just stepping into some type of chief privacy role, director of privacy role, and figuring out what to be doing. Some others have been anointed that title, also trying to figure out what they're doing. Some have been fortunate and their companies recognize the value of having a privacy officer in that role for some time. So we're really excited to dive into what it's like to try and build a privacy program. To get us started, we always want to understand, how did people find their way to their current role?
So I actually found my job the old-fashioned way. I was shopping with my wife in Costco and bored out of my mind wandering through the aisles. And it was pre-Thanksgiving Costco shopping, if you've ever experienced that hell. I was beyond unamused with the moment. And I went on Indeed.com because the week prior, the CPRA had been born into life. So this would have been November 2020. And I noticed there was a chief privacy officer listing for Gravy Analytics. And I said to myself, wow, a location data company, that's about to get hot. So I was, and it already was a big field to begin with that had a lot of attention. So every day I think to myself, had my wife not dragged me to Costco, I wouldn't have this job. But I'm really happy that she did, and really happy that I applied, and it's been going very well since.
It's funny you say that. I won't give all the details, but I actually remember being in a Costco and talking to people, taking phone calls about jobs many, many years ago. And it was in a Costco. I can remember the aisle I was in and everything. So Costco and jobs are apparently a thing to do.
But did you hear about the sheer boredom leading to opportunity? If I went on and said that I had sheer boredom shopping with my wife, I would get an elbow in the ribs immediately.
But that's why Jason is the guest and you are the host.
And I may yet get elbowed in the ribs before this episode is over. But before that happens, Jason wanted to get kind of a baseline understanding of what does Gravy Analytics do and what is data as a service.
So we are a mobility analytics company. We ingest commercially available location data. And of course, it's going to trigger a lot of privacy issues that I'm sure we're about to explore. We filter them and turn them into products that can be consumed by our downstream customers. So there's two core business lines. The first is we make location-based audiences available. So we have geofenced certain parts of our world, and individuals who visit those places tend to have the same consumer profile. So Best Buy purchasers or NFL fans, things of that nature. Again, devices that appear inside stadiums, for example. And then the second core product set that we have is our data will be uploaded into an S3 bucket, and platforms can use that data to power their own software solutions, what have you. So we enable companies to power their own solutions. We're much like the fuel, but the downstream customers are the engine, and there's a variety of engines that we power.
So Jason, just as a follow-up to that, like, for example, longest time client of mine owns car washes. And so what's important to him is having information about potential customers who frequently travel, let's say within a 3-mile radius of his car wash. So that might be the kind of geofence data that might be a customer to say, hey, I'd like to learn more about those people because those are in close proximity and might want to be marketed to for a free car wash or what have you. Is that a kind of fair understanding of a use case?
It's a basic understanding of it. Yes, we don't have a UI that allows for 3-mile radiuses, and we can talk more about the specifics. But we do, for example, have an audience new car buyers, and you can actually split it up by OEMs based upon where the device was buying, because car lots are fairly large, and if a device is going back to that car lot, they maybe just bought a Hyundai recently, what have you. So that's sort of the idea.
Appreciating that data location is a hot topic. It's a sensitive topic. Knowing where I am, how precise do you know where I am compared to, a range and an area? As you're developing those products, where does privacy fit into that? How does the privacy considerations get, as a part of the overall business goals?
So I was thinking of rebranding our privacy program much after that movie that just won the Oscar, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's similar to that mantra, though, because beginning to end, we have a series of privacy ambassadors, you might call it that, or other individuals within each vertical in my company that understands whenever a privacy issue comes up, I should probably call Jason, and we have rolling meetings. But privacy interests are always included in the development of our products. So from the very beginning, when we first look at the whiteboard, we have to think through, all right, what privacy controls are we going to put into our product set? And it's not just to keep ourselves out of trouble. Truth of the matter is, our customers are not going to buy products where privacy has not been integrated or at least thought through before the product is sold to them. So our sales team, our engineering team understand that if they want to sell a product, it needs to have privacy branded inside of it. Otherwise, it just won't sell. And that, truthfully, is one of the greatest strengths, I think, that a company like mine has, because although, yes, location data is under, I would say, unprecedented scrutiny, the same thing is also true on the other side of the coin. Privacy concerns have now unprecedented reach within my company. Everyone gets it. So I don't have to sell it at all. In fact, folks are coming to me first most of the time. So I actually will say that I enjoy the fact that privacy concerns around the location data industry have really been elevated as of late, because in a weird way, it actually does make my job easier.
Can we talk a little bit in more detail on what that looks like? Because a lot of people are trying to figure out that design element. When there's a new product or a new feature, an update, how do those engineering teams interact with you? Is it just a call and a conversation? Or do you have specific assessments that someone has to fill out first? Just trying to help our audience who, again, everyone's trying to kind of figure out what this by design aspect looks like, and how you're doing it would be helpful for others to hear and learn from.
Sure. So, and again, it's probably going to vary from company to company. Many of our products actually begin with our customers. We get a phone call from a customer that says, "Hey, we'd like a product that does X. Can you make such a thing?" And the first thing that the engineer or sales or account manager will do is say, maybe, but I need to call privacy first. And the fact that that happens from the beginning is, again, a fantastic benefit that I think the location data industry has compared to other industries where privacy might not be always front of mind, and therefore the conversation happens way too late. So is it a formal assessment? No, we do have PIAs, of course, that we do after the fact once the product is complete to make sure we did our homework correctly. But no, we are invited from the very beginning. It'll be a Zoom call or what have you. We don't do in-person meetings as often as we did pre-COVID. But the fact of the matter is we are able to integrate privacy controls from the beginning. So whether it's removing mobile advertiser IDs to make a product more privacy compliant, or removing sensitive locations, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, those are all levers that we can pull on to make sure that the product accomplishes the goal of the customer while also making sure that our company stays compliant and truthfully doesn't operate in a weird way, because we don't just do privacy compliance, we also do PR and branding stuff too. And it's hard to measure those things because you can be privacy compliant, yes or no, but pissing people off or weirding folks out in the media is a different thing to measure. So we also keep an eye on both of those things.
Fair point, and important to do so.
So from my perspective with the data location, where I've found it is I represent a smart city. So we have all kinds of cameras that help identify traffic patterns and whatnot. I've learned all about LiDAR, which is another way to do traffic patterns with a laser beam that hits the car, but you don't know that Jody's sitting in it, whereas a camera, you might be able to figure that out. And so, with that context in mind, can you talk a little bit about how your organization with Privacy by Design kind of thinks about data minimization practices, such as using LiDAR for foot traffic to count it versus a camera that might identify a person, and how that might infuse itself into how you go to market with products or think about the data that you may be collecting in order to create your products?
Well, sure. So the first thing to note is I know a lot of folks, particularly in the media, are concerned about the ability of location data to re-identify individuals, right? So that's what the Dobbs decision and the blowback from it has all been wrapped around. And I know a lot of advocates are saying, well, shouldn't data minimization cure that? The concept that a product should only reveal certain characteristics of a device that are necessary for the product to actually complete its goal. And any extra data sets are unnecessary and therefore should be removed, similar to the data minimization mantra that we see in the GDPR. And the truth of the matter is, when we calibrated our privacy program to the GDPR back in 2018, we thought through, okay, how can we remove as many identifiers from a data set, similar to the LiDAR example you're giving, while also making sure that the data set still has value to our downstream customers. So we don't have any personally identifiable location data. But that's difficult in terms of convincing regulators, journalists, and even sometimes skeptical customers to believe. So when I say, well, all our location data has the mobile advertiser ID removed, or if the mobile advertiser ID is still present, there aren't enough data points to determine whether or not a phone belongs to Jason Sarfati or Jody Daniels or whomever. Nonetheless, there is still a concern that if you have enough volume, then yes, you can identify a device. So we have been getting around some of those concerns by building APIs that only do certain queries, and by extension, remove the larger data set because it's not even necessary. That actually helps a lot for processing costs, truthfully, and getting around those concerns. So I actually don't have to sell anyone here on data minimization because the processing costs are just so great. So that actually is good. And then I can kind of just tack on privacy as an added benefit for removing identifiers and removing volume.
So Jason, when you talked about removing identifiers with like a mobile application, could you like walk me through an example of how that would work? Like if my data were, I guess, my mobile phone, but you can't track it back to Justin. Can you get maybe a little bit more detailed on how that works? I'm trying to understand that a little bit better.
So the only pure identifier that a company like Gravy has is the mobile advertiser ID. Now there's some schools of thought that say the MAID on its own is personal data and it's identifiable. Of course, we know that that's not true because it's just a series of letters and numbers. And of course, there's also a bunch of companies out there whose entire business model is to do reverse matches to get the MAID and get back to Justin. So we, whenever possible, remove the mobile advertiser ID from a data set and swap it out with a pseudonymous, we just call it the Gravy registration ID, which is a new number, letter, alphanumeric identifier that still allows an end customer to discriminate between one phone and another. All right, this is one device, that's a separate one because the number is slightly different. But now, because it's no longer a MAID, I have no way of going to another company and trying to re-identify Justin. So the data is really useful for commuter patterns and supply chain analytics and all those other great things that my company does without running the risk of knowing that Justin's going from his house to his office and everywhere else back and forth.
Thank you.
You mentioned getting ready for GDPR back in 2018, which when you said that, it was, wow, that was a fast 5 years. And now we have a plethora of US privacy laws. We have 5 that will be effective at the end of 2023. And we have 7 that got passed just this year, excluding any of the other very specific health and kids privacy laws. With all that being said, can you share how is your organization going about these new privacy laws? How will you add these into the mix? And whether that be from your own kind of internal company data, marketing data, and then obviously the product set.
So the product set, truthfully, is what we are almost exclusively focused on. Yes, there are other verticals within my company where you could say there is a privacy risk that's at least somewhat measurable. But for those companies that are in at least my industry, all the regulatory risk, all the enforcement risk is, okay, let's go with 99%, is going to be coming from the product set. And if I actually made a stink of the other 1%, I think some folks in my company might scratch their heads. Why are you worried about that other thing? We have a whole product set over here that likely requires more privacy compliance efforts. So we are a Virginia-based company. We were closely following the Virginia privacy law that came out last year. And, it's funny because after CCPA came out, talk about a time traveling, that was June 2018, if memory serves, something around there. Okay, yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, well, there's going to be 10 to 20 different state privacy laws in the next year or two. And there actually was sort of this all quiet on the Western Front kind of detente where no, there were no states that did any new privacy efforts. And we actually, when we saw the CPRA moving through the legislative channels, made sure that our privacy program tacked itself to that. So we haven't made any specific state level adjustments in the last year because we felt that, well, we already are doing the explicit opt-ins, we already have the privacy impact assessments, we already have the notice and disclosures done correctly. We're doing all these other privacy conscious efforts that should be able to be enough for all the new state level privacy efforts, considering especially that CPRA in Virginia were sort of our North and South stars that we were looking at. And I'll just tease the metaphor. We had GDPR and of course our customer concerns layered in. But the big thing that came across our world in February, March, April this year was the Washington My Health, My Data Act. That was a fundamental change for the location industry to adjust to. So it's difficult to keep track of all the state level privacy laws, but now we also have to keep track of some of these I'll call them sector specific, maybe is the word, privacy laws, because now it's first I thought, okay, one day, how bad could it be? 50 privacy laws I have to focus on. I'm realizing, oh no, it could be literally hundreds of thousands if every state just passes 12 at a time. So
Jason, can you share what you think, maybe 2 tips to someone who's trying to build and maintain a privacy program that you think has made yours successful? You've shared, the company understands it. That might be because of the industry that you're in, but there's also some tactics that you're doing. There's obviously education that's happening. And if you can offer up maybe 2 tips, I think people would find that really helpful.
So I'd say number one, be available, because folks, so I've worked at larger companies, and folks sometimes don't even know where privacy sits or who they are. And in a pre-COVID context, I was literally wandering the halls, shaking hands, and in particular going to different floors, because we sat on, actually I remember it was the 5th floor, and I knew the engineering folks were upstairs. And I would make a point of going up there and introducing myself. The big benefit of that is whenever there's a problem, they're going to know who to email, and they might be more inclined to email because, oh, they met you in the hallway a couple months ago. Okay, I'm not worried about emailing Jason to get him involved in this conversation early. In a post-COVID remote work context, I say folks need to be much more involved in making themselves available and known. It's almost like internal marketing in a way. So on a twice yearly basis, the privacy team does a presentation to the whole company over lunch. We call them lunch and learns. We just had one about a month and a half ago where we explain all the efforts that we're doing so people can kind of connect the dots. And then we also have rolling privacy meetings, in particular with my sales team, because they need to know how to sell a product. And there's always adjustments that are being made in light of the privacy concerns to whatever product we're selling. And truthfully, they can't really sell much without privacy being involved. So that's a road that goes in both directions. My second piece of advice is, and since we're all being honest with each other, it is impossible to be a successful privacy professional without offending people's feelings and engaging sometimes in some difficult conversations. And so if you are an aspiring privacy professional, or your current privacy professional, and you're unwilling to challenge assumptions, you're unwilling to, I'm not gonna say make enemies, but perhaps unwilling to change people's work and force them to say, hey, we need to go back to the drawing board and fix things, then respectfully, one might be in the wrong profession, because this is a job where sometimes the answer has to be no. And it's difficult. I think, everyone's inclined to always be the nice guy or girl, and you can't be a successful privacy professional if you're always saying yes. So that's like my kind of my core advice. Make yourself known, which allows you to be kind of, the mean person from time to time, because that's what's required of the job to keep the company out of trouble.
Excellent tips. We appreciate you sharing, and just say no.
I think
sometimes
I'm thinking for Jason would be just tell them you have to be an iconoclast, someone who attacks cherished institutions or ideas.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's what came to mind. But
No, we're on the same page, right? And it's funny because I know that in many times when I'm making a phone call, like, they're not going to be happy, but they will be happy inevitably because we can come to a better place that will inevitably make the company more money, that will keep us out of trouble, and they'll see through to the other side. So it's I never thought that being a privacy professional would rely so heavily on human emotions and some of these other things I actually explored. And I took some psych classes in college, what have you. Just, wow, like I am going back to just being a human 101 here. But that's the thing. It's a large organization, and frequently the privacy function is being filtered as a way of making corporate enterprise level decisions. So you are in many ways the traffic cop and also directing the company in terms of its branding and what kind of company it wants to be. So you're going to have to figure out conflicts And I wish everyone the best of luck on that journey.
Makes sense.
I guess one other thing, it sounds like your role as the legal part of your role has really evolved, because a lot of attorneys I talk to in-house, they're fighting that battle just to get on the radar of people, but you've transformed from a role where that was a bit more of the case to one where they freely realize that you're literally part of the design team for the product, because your company literally has to bake in privacy by design. It is an actual critical feature to sell the product.
Yes, that's correct. So, and again, sometimes I worry that privacy might be occasionally overly involved, right? I got to be conscious of that too. Or am I spreading myself too thin? And the fact of the matter is, with location data privacy quite literally being a daily news cycle, you can just go type in location data right now into Google and hit news, and you're going to see a bunch of what I'll call systemic threat level storylines that are impacting my industry. So the fact of the matter is, no, we need to be involved from beginning to end. I have a great relationship with our external marketing and communications team, because they at this point have figured out how to successfully communicate our privacy efforts. And sometimes journalists will come calling and ask questions. And it's incredibly helpful to have the privacy person part of those conversations, as well as with the sales team and the engineering team, I even the human resources team. I can't think of a vertical within my company where I haven't been involved with them at least once in the last 30 days. And sometimes it's daily.
With all that you know about privacy, we always like to ask, what is your best privacy or security tip that you would share at a party?
At a party.
At a party.
Um, so I actually, so my wife has a younger sister who is 16 years old. And it's interesting because I frequently, especially a month and a half ago, found myself at some of these high school graduation parties. I'm 34. So this was a thing that I had been going to previously, and then kind of that chapter of my life had closed, and suddenly, boom, it's been reopened. And I've been fascinated by how teenagers interact with social media and are extremely willing to share everything. In fact, that's part of the high school experience now. And what's even more interesting is, because I'm sort of this millennial, they say things and share things with me that I know they're disinclined to share with their parents. So it's really an eye-opening experience. I'll give you an example. So on Snapchat, I'm sure you're aware, you can share your location. And I find this, again, very interesting, because when I speak with regulators or even journalists, they say no one's interested in sharing their location data, which does not jive at all with the experience that I see when I go to a high school graduation party and I see these kids quite literally showing on their screens, this is where the party is because I can see where everybody is. Like that oh, Emma's there, blah, blah, blah. And I try to be, the cool kid as well, because I've been invited to this party. So I give this tip, hey, just so you know, anyone can see your location as well, because you're sharing it with this larger group of folks, and anything you post is probably going to be out there for eternity. 10, 15 years from now, you might be applying for a job, or doing something where you want a little more professional foot forward. Do you really want to be putting that online? Most of the time, truthfully, it falls on deaf ears, but every now and then I do get a kind of a quiet nod. Yeah, I should probably not do that. So I would say to every privacy professional that has access to a teenager or let's say a middle schooler, should see what they not necessarily convince them that they're doing anything wrong, but see where their head is at. And I have this theory that, let's check in with each other 10, 15 years from now, that the privacy landscape is going to fundamentally change when Gen Z enters the boardroom. They're going to view all these things a little differently because they grew up with devices in their hands. So their privacy tips that they're going to be giving to us are going to be completely different than the ones that we give to them. And I can't wait to see how that plays out.
It'll be interesting to see how that works, because now if the interest is, and I've seen that, I've seen teens show, here's Snapchat and here's all the cars, and it's so social right now. And that is their entire universe. Where 10, 15 years later, their universe will be different. They will have kids, they will have jobs, they will have other things that they might choose to decide, actually, no, I kind of get what those annoying older people were trying to tell me now. So I think that will be interesting to evaluate.
Yeah. Let's check in with each other.
We will. We'll make a note. We'll make a calendar invite.
So, Jason, when you're not leading the privacy efforts at your company and making interesting observations about society, what do you like to do for fun?
So I love to travel, and I have to say, during the pandemic, that obviously kind of hit hard. That I was stuck in an apartment in downtown DC, and I swore to myself, all those places that I'd wanted to travel and visit, I'm going to do once the pandemic is over. And I'm grateful enough I've been doing that. Not to make this too work related, but in the privacy world, I got to point out, there's really cool conferences. So, in October, the IAPP is having something in San Diego. I'm actually speaking there, and I'm making a point, even if I don't speak, I'm going to those conferences. I'm meeting people. I'm getting on airplanes and doing all the traveling that I wish I could do, because the pandemic in particularly really showed me that you don't need to buy materialistic things. What real satisfaction do you get from that? Instead, no, go travel. So for those of folks who are listening to the podcast now that are maybe running on a treadmill, thinking to themselves, I should really book a ticket tonight. Yes, do it, because I think you'll get a lot of pleasure out of it. It's always interesting to experience new cultures. Whenever I go to Europe, I always get a kick out of the GDPR notice and consent prompts. I'm like, this is funny. And half the time, truthfully, they don't even, I know, comply with the GDPR provisions. But nonetheless, that's sort of a sidebar. The point being, I really recommend everyone focus on experiences and trying new things. That was my goal this year. And so far, I've really enjoyed it.
And Jason, I'm so glad to hear you talk about the travel and how you evaluate privacy, because when we went through border control in Canada versus the US, one of us was snapping pictures and showing the difference between whether or not they had to have the picture of my kids and whatnot, making for interesting LinkedIn posts.
So I'm not the only one looking at cookie banners. They still do that now. Oh, that's a good cookie banner. Or that's a terrible cookie banner. I'm glad I'm not the only one who is always thinking about privacy, because it is everywhere. And Jason, I look forward to seeing and meeting you, hopefully in person, in San Diego.
Okay.
I'll be there as well.
Get to go to San Diego?
No, someone has to stay home and watch the kids and the dog. You've been assigned that role. And Jason, where can people learn more and connect with you?
Sure. So I'm always around on LinkedIn. Just type in my name and you'll find me there. I'm on Twitter. But honestly, if you see me walking down the hall, I go to every summit. So every April, I'll be wandering the halls at the IPP conference in DC, and I try to go to PSR. So if folks are going there, please, tap me on the shoulder and come find me. Not to make myself sound like too much of a degenerate, but if you go to the hotel lobby near the bar, you're likely to find me there, just kind of catching up with friends. So if you wander to the Marriott, or actually, yes, it's a Marriott in both places, right? So the Marquis in DC and the Marriott in San Diego, just go there, you'll find me. So pass out business cards and make friendships. I gotta say, at my wedding, actually, I had quite a few privacy professionals in attendance. So that, I think, speaks highly. I love our industry, and I love the community that we have. Folks will frequently change jobs and lateral, but the friendships that we've built along the way tend to stay. Yes, it's a growing community, but nonetheless, I think the fact that we all see each other on a rolling basis several times a year does kind of create this sort of privacy family. I'd like to give a compliment to the efforts of the LGBT community in particular. They always have those after parties afterward, LGBT Tech and the others at the IAPP conferences, and folks, enjoy themselves afterward. Like, I don't believe most other industries do that. So like the medical industry or the accounting industry, the legal court industry, they don't really have those types of events. So you can find me at those places or online, and I just love the fact that we all connect in that positive way. I hope that's one thing that stays, and I think it will.
I agree. I've been in this industry for a while, and I was at dinner last night, hadn't seen people definitely pre-pandemic and maybe even longer than that. And it was really, really fun to reconnect with some old friends. And your observation about summits kind of interesting. People have decided to call it's like the high school reunion. And as the industry keeps getting bigger and you make more friends, then there's a lot more people that you have to keep seeing at the reunion. Yeah. We're going to need to figure out how we solve that. But it is a very friendly place, and I also hope it stays that way. Well, Jason, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing all the great wisdom that you did today. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Let's keep in touch. I'll see you in San Diego, if not before then.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.